take your Bibles and turn to Judges chapter 8. Judges chapter 8. We had talked at the end of I'll tell you what, let me open in a word of prayer and then I'll start, as they say in the South, chapping my jaws. Now, Father, we thank you again for this day. We thank you for those that are here. We ask now, Lord, for your blessings. I personally thank you that it isn't as cold as what it could be, but I ask that it's possible that you warm it up more for us. But we will endure it. And, we thank you for what you've given us. We thank you for this day. And we thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us. We love you. We trust you. In Jesus' name. All right, so we finished up Judges chapter 7, and in verse 25 it says they took two princes of the Midianites, talking about Ephraim had gathered together, which Ephraim was a very large tribe when compared to Manasseh, and I meant to check it to see how large they were in comparison with all the tribes, and I forgot. I got wrapped up in some other things. Actually, I had a little panic this morning when my printer wouldn't work, but anyway. They took the two princes of the Midianites, Orb and Zeb, and they slew Orb upon the rock of Orb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian and brought the heads of Orb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side of Jordan. We had talked about what this had done and why they had named the place what they had, the rock of Orb and the winepress of Zeb. If nothing else, this practice, what they did, it actually did two things. It shut off the leadership. It was destroyed. And so when you destroy the leadership, you destroy a lot of the coherency inside that fighting group. And so the leadership was destroyed. They had nobody to follow. And I'm not saying all their leadership, but we know they took out two princes, and they defeated those that were fighting with the princes. We talked about it being a trophy when they took the head, proof of death, and how demoralizing it would be for one, and how it would energize the other for battle. So that's where we left off. So now we're starting in Judges chapter 8, with verse 1, and the Bible says, "And the men of Ephraim said unto him, Why hast thou served us thus?" You know, that's like preaching a sermon and somebody come up to you afterwards and said, you didn't have to preach that. Why hast thou served us thus? Thou callest us not, when thou wentest to fight with the Midianites, and they did chide with him sharply. The idea here is really interesting. It shows there's some discontent with the Ephraimites. The battle was won, and now after a great victory, instead of celebrating with the others that had participated in that battle, Satan now takes the opportunity to plant a seed, to sow discord in between the tribes. Now, I say Satan because I understand that Satan's desire, if he cannot defeat you, he's going to want to bring division among your group. And what he's trying to do is to divide them so they can't do anything for God. And he's basically trying to destroy their ability. So, at this point, he's sowing these seeds of discontent. And I have to ask myself, if I read through this, I said, when were they sown? When were these seeds of discontent sown? Because what we see here is them coming to fruition. Seeds are always planted before, and usually a good measure of time before they sprout, and before you see the fruits of those seeds. So we understand that this discord, this discontent, those seeds were planted before. When it was, we don't know. I think it gives us a clue, but we'll look at that directly. But anyway, they've taken root, they've grown in heart of at least some of the tribe of Ephraim. Now, it doesn't tell us how many. What it does say, it says the men of Ephraim said. So is this, I look at it as typically a generic term. It was people out of those men that come to battle that spoke this up. And the reason I say that is, typically when you get a group of people together and there's some discord, it's usually founded in just a few. And it spreads from those to others. So I believe it's typically, and I'm going to say that probably 1,000 times today, but anyway, I think that's what we're looking at here. I don't believe it was all it could be, but I just don't see this in this passage. But they said, why hast thou served us? What did you do? You ever had anybody tell you that? What did you do? It's like they're accusing you, you know? It's like you've done something wrong. I remember in my life having heard those words several times, and there was an inflection. What did you? You know? And really, when they say that, it says, why hast thou served us thus? What did you do? That you didn't call us. That you didn't let us know. Really, in this instance, the men of Ephraim are accusing Gideon of doing them a wrong and not calling them to battle. Now, there's a lot of things that go in my mind, and one of the thoughts would be, why would these men, first of all, why were they not rejoicing? I mean, just a few hours before, there was a great host oppressing Israel. You know, and now that host has been routed, and they are literally free from that oppression. But yet they're not rejoicing. So I'm sitting there thinking, why are they not joined together and rejoicing in this great victory over those that have been oppressing them, over those that were placing their families in danger, of great distress, and possibly even starvation, because they were impoverishing those people. So why are they not rejoicing? Well, the one reason I can give you is that Satan has intervened. When is the time when we're most able to be attacked successfully? You smile, you know?
After a victory?
After a victory. Because we're not looking for attacks. We're happy, everything's going our way, we want to rejoice, and then that attack comes. Can you imagine how that being said among people that just had a victory would deflate it? It's like David, when David mourned before the people for yeah, it was Absalom, wasn't it? Absalom's death, and they all stole away quietly to their tents. It stole the rejoicing from the victory, from the joy they had. And so I can see that happen. They're not rejoicing in the victory that God has given them, but instead, and this is my opinion, these people are focusing on a matter of the flesh. And I say that because I believe their problem was that they wanted glory for this. They wanted to have the praise of this battle. How many men got the glory? Well, I know they deflected to God, but if you really look at it, Gideon and Abzir, I always get his name mixed up, but anyway, those 300 who really got a lot of victory and praise, they really got the glory. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question though. He sent messengers throughout Israel, and wasn't the Ephraimites who captured the Zebin order?
Yeah, but they weren't there in the original of the 30,000
This was
went
at
home.
the end. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're upset that they weren't
But see,
including the whole thing.
that gets me too, because I'm sure there's more than 30,000, because there were, I think there were 55,000 among the number in just Zebulun. And Zebulun's not even mentioned here at all. It kind of makes you wonder that they didn't get the notification that it did come. We don't know. But see, I had that same thought. Were they notified? Did they get the summons? But if you go down, when it says "Thou callest us not," that idea, that word there gives the idea that they were not summoned. So
maybe it means at the beginning.
Well,
because he did send.
I don't have any problem with that, but we don't know. It's a speculation. But it does say that "Thou callest us not." The idea I get is they were not summoned for whatever reason. But I do have thoughts on that as well.
Okay.
My opinion on that, and I'll go ahead and deal with that, is that these men, not that they regretted not fighting, but I think they regretted not being able to claim the glory now. So understand, we have an adage about a strong woman. Anybody know that one? Yeah, that's the one. Well, what happens when you scorn people? You know, they get their dander up, and these people could have looked at it in that aspect as a great disrespect. I think, in this, if you noticed, I've said 3 or 4 times in my opinion, because it's not clear, really clear here. But human nature tells me that not a lot of people would regret not being in a battle where they risked their life, you know, but they would regret not being able to claim a great victory or some praise or glory over that battle if there was any a way that they could do that. So they didn't have a great role in the battle. They didn't have a way to, in their mind at this point, to claim a whole lot of victory. They were angry at Gideon, and I believe, my opinion is, they were jealous. But Gideon's going to do some things here that is really interesting. Now, we mentioned about the calling and summoning, and I don't know why they were not summoned. If they weren't, I don't know if they were and did not obey that, with the rest of the tribes. But this I can say. It could be possible that God did not instruct Gideon to call them. It could be possible because God was really the one over the battle, and it would have been in the character of God not to call them. Why? Well, we just said in comparison to Manasseh had thousands, but Ephraim had tens of thousands. So there was a very large tribe. What did he do originally? He took 32,000 men and he whittled them down to 300. So if he'd have brought in Ephraim too, see, it wasn't in the character of God to bring all those in. So I can kind of understand it in that aspect. Now, God, if all these people would have come for battle, all of Ephraim, then where would the glory for God have been? It wasn't in the 30,000. It wasn't in the 3. It was in the 300. And so you see the potential, the understanding of that. And I can't tell you one way or the other, but I see where that is possible. I also see, by reading here and the way these men are acting, they wanted glory from the victory. And like I said, it's very visible from the following passage, or the following passage. What would be the main reason God could not use the tribe of Ephraim by what you see in that verse? What would be the main reason you think he could not use them? I think so, yeah. In their pride, they wanted that glory. Who does glory go to? And maybe for some reason, whether they was in carnality, and I do think it's carnality because their emotions were ruling at this point, and I'll address that a little bit more later. But, with that said, I think there's several truths we need to bring out in this passage that are very important for us to understand. The first one is, Satan is always seeking to destroy us or our testimony. We can look back through and see how all this was organized and done, and then after the victory, especially right here, we see that Satan's still at work. Even in that victory, Satan's not done. He's still at work. He's still trying to destroy them and destroy their testimony. Second, he is the cause and the engineer of the conflicts we face today. And it's all because we are representatives and children of God. That's the reason he does what he does. That's the reason Satan is trying to sow so much discord and to destroy our testimony. We carry the name of God. Third, even after the battle, expect attack. So when you're going through hardships and things, and you come out victorious, you handle yourself properly, things have come out and God's glorified, don't lay back and think, well, we're free and clear. Because you're going to get some more attacks. Satan is never done. His work, he understands the time is short. He's had all these years to work, but the time is short now. God is coming back. Christ is coming back soon. He understands that, and the more he can sow discord and division among the children of God and destroy their testimonies, the less people will get saved. He knows that. And so he's not done. He's going to continually seek to turn the victory and defeat by sowing his seeds of discord. He's going to use emotions like jealousy. He's going to use pride, covetousness, depression. He's going to use the nature of the flesh. He's going to use anything he can to destroy your testimony and what God's trying to do in your life. That's just how Satan works. I think we tend to believe it's not a problem. I've got it. Because we can't see him. Because we think we're doing so well. Well, the Bible has us take heed lest you fall. Be careful of what you're putting your faith and trust in. The moment I say, I'm doing good, who did I just put my trust in? Exactly. Praise the Lord, by the grace of God, I'm doing all right now. It's not I'm doing good. By the grace of God, I'm doing good. So he came in on these because of their, they were exhausted and their guards were down, and he's going to do the same to us. That makes us prone to attack. With that, all that I just said, that is the reason why it's so important to walk in the Spirit. If those men of Ephraim had been spiritual men, holy men of God, would they have been content with their part? See, so and that's what I wanted to draw your attention to. By their response to what happened, that they weren't right with God. They weren't walking where they were supposed to be walking, or with whom they were supposed to be walking. That, because they were not content, because they were not rejoicing in the Lord for their victory, we know two things. First, we know they were at this point being used of Satan to destroy the victory of the people of Israel, the ones they just had achieved. Two, we understand that their flesh was being used of Satan because they were called. Okay, we understand those two things. In the end of this, it says, and the men of Ephraim said unto him, Why hast thou served us thus? That thou callest us not, when thou wentest to fight with the Midianites. This last sentence, and they did chide with him sharply. I took a few minutes to really think on this one, but when I looked up two words, it gives you the clue: chide and sharply. What do you think chide means? We don't use that a lot. We may use it a little.
Is it argue?
Not exactly.
You're not wrong, but there's more to it.
Argue?
That goes with, we go together. Yeah, the idea was kind of like quarreling. They strove, they contended. So you're both right, but I really was wanting you to say strive, but that's fine. You're both right, because they did quarrel, and they contended with Gideon. This was, really at this point, this word is interesting because it can be used for just using words, for quarreling that way, but it also could stand for a physical confrontation, where they actually physically, come to terms like that. I don't know that it was physical, but I do see the heated in here. I kind of doubt the physical, but I see the heated words. And the word sharply indicates the manner those words were spoken. And what we see is that sharply, if somebody's sharp with you, it's a forceful way of speaking. I mean, they just really, they put it right. So they were speaking with a force, but also in strength. They had the numbers. So they weren't watching their words. They weren't careful about the manner they said it. These men spoke from a position of power and strength, and they were very forceful with their words and in their mannerisms. And so that's what we see here when it says they did chide with him sharply. And then we go on, and he said unto them, this is verse 2, What have I done now in comparison of you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Oh, that's a tough name for me. interesting choice of words here that he used. In this verse alone, when I read this, I again understand, and I believe it proves it, that first of all, Gideon is surrendered to God. Second of all, he is a godly man, and he's being led by the Spirit of God. Look at what he says. He's not seeking any gain of any praise or glory for himself like the men of Ephraim. He's the opposite. He is content. He's at peace. I think this verse again reveals that Gideon is a man, is a great leader. Oh wow! I mean, I don't know, but I think generally we get angry when people speak to us that way, and we want to let's just settle this now. But he's not like that. I mean, the Spirit in his words is not there. Gideon's words to these men are, like, what have I done in comparison to you? Think about what he said. How can you compare what I've done to what you just achieved in this battle? Basically, Gideon is giving them praise, but he's doing it in a subtle way. He's not really shouting it out, but he's giving them praise in a subtle way, but also in a very powerful way. What Gideon has done when he praised them, he humbled his contribution to the battle while lifting theirs up. Now, I'm going to tell you something. That is a tremendous mark of leadership. And so you look at this and understanding Gideon is 35 years old or so. He's recently, in the last 2 chapters really, come to be submissive or obedience unto God as we see it in the Scripture. I think it's just tremendous. I look at this and just praise the Lord for Gideon. Look what he's done. So anyway, he draws a comparison now that at that time all these men would understand. He says this: "Is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer?" Now, he's referring to picking grapes. He's referring to the harvest time. Now, what is gleaning? Somebody tell me what gleaning is. That everybody should know what that is. What's gleaning?
Nobody else wants, so it has fallen by the wayside.
Gleaning is coming after the main harvest and picking up the leftovers. Who does that?
The poor.
The poor. So, say again? Well, the law was that once their fields were gleaned, harvested, they could not go back. God's law was they had to leave that for the poor. And every 7 years you had the land was laid to rest. And anybody, if I understood the law correctly, anybody could go in there and harvest that, which grew of itself. It was God's bounty to all the people. So basically, when he says that, he acknowledges they're second in the battle. He didn't call it. That was an acknowledgement. And then he says, he used the term vintage. Now, first of all, he references that he and Abiezer was first to the picking, but he also recognizes and confesses that Ephraim was last. Their gleaning, though. That's where he really draws a point to. He says, is not the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage? The vintage? Now, let me talk a little bit about the idea of the harvest for a minute so we all understand this. The idea of the harvest, and I've said a little bit of this, the laborers come through wherever they work for, the owner of the land, they pick the right fruit, leaving the rest for the poor. It was believed that those that picked the first would get the most, but they would also get the best fruits. And if we refer to, if you look in Ruth, you see her gleaming among the sheaves, which they were doing grain. Here he's using the idea of grapes, but it was the first ripe fruits of the grapes that were placed in vats, and they did that to press out. But what they did, when they put those ripest ones in, they let them things set for a little while, and the weight of those would press them, and out would come a juice which they call the must. And that must was highly prized because it only come out of the ripest and best grapes. And so they would capture that. There would be no mechanical means of compressing the grape. There would be no feet in the grapes or whatever until that must was gathered. And then that must was stored separately. Then they went on with the regular. So see, that was part of what he was saying. The vintage, the vintage, those that reap first would get the best of the juice, the must. They would have the finest in that. So Gideon was saying that even though they picked first, even though they would have the ability to gather the must, the gleaning of Ephraim was better. Now that's saying a lot. You think about what he just told those men. And there's several points in here we'll get to, but I really hope to remember to bring them out anyway. As we said, the gleaning was what was left on the vine or trees after the harvest. Whatever was reaped of the fields, there was always something left that fell off from the sheaves or in the corners of the fields for whatever reason. Gideon's statement really means that even though Ephraim was not part of the first reaping, they were able to get something when they went back after Gideon. They were able to get something that was more valuable than anything Gideon had got. And he's referring to, of course, Oreb and Zeb. Now, I want to say this, because this is also a truth, and it's not brought out much, but the timing of the gathering of the fruit is very important. What would happen if somebody went to gather their grapes too soon? See, the idea is to get it at the optimum time. Let's take an olive tree, for example, because I can kind of give a better picture. They went to that olive tree, and they would go through and they beat the branches once, but olives fell. They had a time, of course, by law they could do so much, and then they would take those. And the only ones that would fall were the ripe ones. There was always green ones, because the green ones, if you've ever picked the green fruit, sometimes it's a little hard to get off. The ripe ones will come right off. Well, what happened if they went prematurely to that tree, to that field, or to that vine? There would be more left than they could gather, and they couldn't, by Judeo law, to go back. So it was very important in their timing. So the gathering was also timing. When they did it was also very important. The law didn't change just because the farmer made a mistake. It was still the same. So Gideon's statement may also have been alluding to this fact as well. They would have understood all the little nuances of what he was saying. I mean, when you use that idiom, that was the life and heart of their time. Those grapes, what they produced for them, what they used them for, it was really central in their lives. It could have also, and this is a little bit of a stretch, but I was thinking about this as I was finishing up this verse. When he mentioned that their grieving gave them better fruit because he ended up with the two princes, his reference of the vintage and the gleaning, of course, would show that they got the first and Gideon got the last. But it could have been almost like admitting a mistake. We went too soon. We gathered too quickly. I don't know that that's true, but I can see that because of the references made in the possibilities, but I don't really put it high. But he was trying to communicate to some people who were not spiritual. They were angry. And he was willing to take the lower position in order to diffuse it and bring unity. And that's tremendous. As I look at this, I see the wisdom in Gideon's account. I see godliness I see him being led of the Spirit as he's dealing with these men. I don't see his flesh involved at this time, and we'll see it later, but we don't see it this time. He wasn't wanting any glory. There was no desire for praise. And it looks to me like at this stage in Gideon's life, the only thing he wanted to do was the will of God. And I see this also in seeking to keep the unity of by his willingness to spread that glory and praise around to all these that were in the valley. What a leader he was. What a tremendous leader. Verse 3. And he said unto these men, he said, God hath delivered into your hands the princes of Midian, Orb and Zeb, and what was I able to do in comparison of you? He says that again. Then their anger was abated toward him when he said that. Well, he just said, what was I doing in comparison to you? But yet they were still angry. So why did their anger change? Well, we know that the gleaning produced the most valued catch in defeating and killing the two princes of Orb and Zeb. But in giving these men the praise and their valuable achievement, what did Gideon do before he did that? He praised the Lord. That's the first thing he did. He said, God hath delivered into your hands. God. I mean, he put it down. He was going to praise them, but God gets the praise first. You know, I thank the Lord for all you've done for him. I just give you praise, but I praise to God first. And that's exactly what he did. God delivered into your hands. It wasn't by your might or your strength or anything else. It wasn't by my planning or anything else. It was God that delivered him in your hands. That's pretty powerful to these men, understanding who they are. I think in doing this, he has evaded another of Satan's traps. I think being led by the Spirit had got out of that. If he had given these men all the glory without recognizing God's word working and giving them the glory, how do you think God would respond? What happens when we don't praise and glorify God as we do, as we should, and we put all the praise and glory on ourselves? We quench the working of the Holy Spirit. God does not change. I believe he had done the same here, but in being led by the Spirit, he didn't steal the glory and praise from God. He does both. He does it in a manner these men would know it was of God, and they were able to gain the victory. It would also indicate what they should already know, that Gideon was glorifying God, not himself, and all that he did. This was not something Gideon was doing to gain glory. I can imagine it had been very difficult in those days to stand up and go into battle knowing anything that happened may never come back. Well, it's the same today as when we go to war, is it not? It takes a lot to do that. And understanding that, I don't think anybody, I guess there's a few crazies, but I wouldn't think anybody really enjoys those types of battles. You know, that you have no control over. So I don't see these Gideon desiring to get out there and get glory that way. I really don't. I see him doing what he's doing because God is leading. But I did notice that after Gideon said, God hath delivered into your hands, while he did not bask in the glory of the victory, and he didn't seek from gaining any glory or stealing glory from God, he really what he was doing was deflecting to God to remind these men about they were oppressed. God had led, God had delivered. It's not by their hand, this victory or anything else. It was God delivered this great multitude to be defeated. You think about what's being said and the position they're in right there. The people, when Ephraim entered the battle, that great host was already en route. And because of that route and this organization, Ephraim come in immediately and killed two princes with their armies or whatever they had with them, whatever the amount they had with them. If that isn't God orchestrating victory, I don't know what is. I think that's tremendous. I'm going to stop right here. And for those who are shivering their timbers, I'm going to make a suggestion. This church is open. You can go in there and warm up. There's some places to sit. There's a lot of stuff in there, which is the reason we can't go in. But you go in there and sit down and warm up and be prepared for the next service. I'm going to give you an extra few minutes anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and warm up.